It's your boy Ancient Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew. We have our usual suspects of AD or Alpha Dean. We have Spiggs 18 or Anthony. And just as a quick reminder, if you haven't already, be sure to follow us here on Twitch or subscribe to us over on YouTube. It is a great help to our channel, and we appreciate all the support we've received so far. You guys are awesome. But that being said, Dean, what are we doing here tonight?
Well, it's going to be an easy, laid-back night. We're going to go over Gamehole Con and, just kind of con etiquette in general. But, Anthony was there at Gamehole Con. He has all sorts of great stories to share with us. And, we've all done the con thing. And, some people may have never done one. So, we're going to talk about what there is to do and how we do it. So,
yeah. I think specifically when it comes to conventions, we really want to talk about running and playing in games in con, not necessarily just con life, but sitting at a con table as a player and as a GM, and the different expectations and perspectives from both sides of the fence. I think is the best way to describe our general discussion today. So hopefully that's going to be a lot of fun. But first and foremost, let's talk about Gamehole Con, because I just came back. I had an absolutely fantastic time. Before I even go any further, I want to thank, let me see if I can get this right. I want to thank Monty, Shauna, Kate, Bruce, Sean, Charles, Tammy, Nora, Olivia, Ren, Jeremy,
Javier,
who am I missing? I think that was everyone that was at the con, but the entire MCG team, you guys, like always, you guys were super gracious, super loving, and you always make my experience, coming to help out at either at Gen Con or Gamehole Con, top notch. So I just want to say thank you to MCG for making my experience, and I brought Brandon from the server on, and we hung out with the MCG team pretty much every day, and we had a fantastic time. So on behalf of me and Brandon, I just want to say thank you.
Well, I mean, I can second that because, like I said, Gen Con was the same way. They were absolutely awesome. So I think we're just speaking to the converted.
But Gamehole Con, guys, was a blast. Go ahead, Al, you was going to say something?
No, I was going to ask you, platitudes for MCG aside, how was Gamehole Con? What did you get down with? How was the whole experience as a whole? Not just I'm jealous as hell, I'll say it right here in front of everybody, that you got to hang out with all those people and be so close with them. What else did you get up with? How was the con as a whole?
It was a freaking blast. The one thing I like about Gamehole Con over Gen Con is that Gen Con is like a full-blown convention, right? And with a full-blown convention, you have the lines, you have the crowds, you have you barely have a moment to yourself. But Gamehole Con's a little different. It feels more like a family con, if that makes any sense. You don't have to wait on these. Even the food, when you wait for the food trucks, it isn't a 30-minute wait like you would get at Gen Con. So, from that aspect, it was freaking awesome. You get a more hands-on with not only the MCG team, who had the whole second floor of Gamehole Con, but with every other game company like Free League, you get to talk DCC, you get to talk to the actual designers of the product, because it's very, you could just literally walk to most game designers and just have a conversation with them. So it's, from that perspective, it was freaking awesome.
Gamehole Con.
Go ahead, Dean.
Gamehole Con is just intimate. It's what it is. It's really a much more intimate setting. And from my experience, our experience last year when we were all there together, like how we just walking along and Ed Greenwood is standing there. You can go, how you doing, Ed? And he'll have a whole conversation with you.
It's funny. It's funny you say that, because I had that same exact experience with Zeb Cook at this Gamehole Con. I went to a party at the Sheridan with Eric, and I was just standing there talking to someone, and right next to me was Zeb Cook, and I was talking to Zeb Cook's son, and he was like, "Oh, you know who my father is?" He was like, my father is Zeb Cook. And I was like, hell yeah, I know who your father is. Not only does he have a huge background in the gaming industry, in the video game industry, he wrote Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, he wrote Pool of Radiance, and, I sat there and spoke to Zeb Cook for like 30 minutes. It was freaking awesome.
And Cat Hub, you're hilarious. You see what Cat Hub writes about, I heard it's way more intimate with candles, low lighting, berry white, and rose petals everywhere.
I mean, it was quite nice from my experience last year, and yeah, it is. I definitely, having been to both Gen Con and Gamehole, I definitely prefer the smaller the Gamehole Con. It's easier to enjoy yourself, if that makes sense. Like with what you call it, Gen Con, it's like you have to. There's so much going on at the same time. There's like. And everything's so far apart. Like it's a tough time to get everything in.
And I'll be honest with you, there's way too many people at Gen Con. I mean, it's a madhouse. It really, really is. But
the one thing I will give Gen Con though is Gen Con has absolutely every game you could possibly imagine you want to find. That was one issue. Like I was looking for Everyday Heroes. I couldn't find it at Gamehole Con. It would have been everywhere at Gen Con, because Gen Con pretty much has representation for like 90% of the game companies, except for Wizards of the Coast for some reason. They have actual plays, but Wizards of the Coast usually doesn't have that much of a presence at Gen Con, but you could find all their books everywhere.
Well, that's because Wizards of the Coast looks at us all as peasants. They're too good. They're too good to walk amongst the peasants.
Dean, you'll be proud of me. I ran 6.5 games at Gamehole Con. Which...
Awesome. That's awesome.
You're gonna have to explain and a half part. Well, what happened?
All right. So I signed up to run 4 games. One game. Dean knows that I like to network and film videos. Like they both know I'm like the mean den mother trying to get them to film videos at these conventions. So I was there by myself. So I was doing. I thank God for Brandon and Olivia from MCG. Olivia was great help. So was Brandon. They held the camera for me. I shot like maybe 20 to 25 videos that will be dispersing on the YouTube channel shortly. But they were my camera people. So traditionally, Dean especially knows, I'll run 1 or 2 games, but the majority of the time at a convention, I'm either shooting videos or asking people for interviews. So in this con, right, I said, okay, I'm gonna run 1 game a day. So I signed up for 4 games because it was a 4-day con. Then while I was at the MCG booth, there was a couple of GMs that either canceled or, couldn't make it. To be honest, I really don't freaking know why they didn't show up. But they asked me to cover for them. So I picked up 2 more games that way. And the 2-hour game, the half game, was the website RBG Bot, where they were at the MCG booth and I was talking to them. And which that's a cool website. If you haven't checked it, check out RBG Bot. They write articles on all sorts of different gaming systems and they review people's. It's a really cool website. So I was talking to them and all the games were full and they were saying, hey, I really want to play Cypher System. We never played it before. And so I was like, how much time you got? They said, we have 2 hours. So I sat down with the 2 guys from RBG Bot and I ran them through the first 2 scenes of Bitter Seeds.
Nice.
Which was a lot of fun. So, like with every convention, and I think MCG is no different, if you volunteer for pretty much any gaming company, this is kind of usual standard affair. You usually get like a booklet, like with MCG, I don't know if you can see this clearly, but you get a booklet like this with all the adventures that they're running at the con. MCG was running Numenera, they had an adventure called The Crawling. Cypher System had an adventure called Bitter Seeds, and Old Gods of Appalachia had an adventure, Best Leave the Ghost Alone. I did not run the Old Gods adventure, though I read it, because and we'll get about this later in like prepping for running con games. Me personally, I like to concentrate on one game, like one adventure that I know personally that I'm going to be able to knock it out the park because I've ran it several times at the convention. And then I ran all the adventures in the booklet. So I ran 4 Bitter Seeds, which was the Rust and Redemption post-apocalyptic adventure. And then I picked up 2 adventures of the Crawling, the Numenera adventure. And then I didn't get a chance to run Oh Gods, but I was there as a standby in case of emergencies. But they also had Devil's Dandy Dogs to play, Stealing Stories for the Devil to play, and No Thank You Evil. So there was MCG had a pretty wide selection of different games you could play and sign up for, and they were all sold out and booked.
And I can corroborate with Anthony about those adventures because those are the same adventures and same thing that they offer at Gen Con this year. And I can say all the adventures, they really rock. It's funny because my experience was just the opposite. I ran Bitter Seeds and Best Leave Those Ghosts Alone, and never had to end up running the Crawling at Gen Con. I just ran the other 2, which was funny. Oh, and I ran Stealing Stories for the Devil a few times at Gen Con too. But for context out there, people, the reason why Anthony said I'd be proud of him for running so many games is because that's normally my shtick at the convention. I'll run games from sun up to sundown. Anthony's always telling me, Dean, get off the goddamn games. Come over here and do an interview.
Yeah. At the detriment of the CU, Dean is running games. At the detriment to himself, because he misses all the parties. He misses all the...
That's what happens. I miss the parties. I miss the panels. But people get a great game experience, and that's one of the things that I really like because, I do enjoy running the games, and it's always a different experience. Like, no matter how many times you run it, Anthony can attest to it, Al can attest to it. No matter how many times you run an adventure, it always is a different experience with another table. So it's a lot of fun out there.
Yeah, I only got to play one game, and I technically played it when the con was over. Because on Sundays the con closes at 4, and I was trying to play Devil's Dandy Dog. First of all, Devil's Dandy Dog, they premiered it at Gamehole Con. Looks absolutely gorgeous. Javier did all the art on all the. It has it's like a narrative game. It's a little bit of best way to describe it. It's a little bit of Stealing Stories for the Devil, where it's collaborative storytelling with the players, but you use tarot cards for inspiration, and Javier drew all the tarot cards, and they look freaking awesome. So it was the last day of the con, and the con was over. We were getting ready to clean up, because I was gonna stay back and help MCG, pack everything up. And I was talking to a couple of people from the server. Oh, that was another thing. Everybody from the CU server that came up and said hi, and and we talked and chat. Thank you so much. But there was a couple of people from the server and a couple of MCG employees who never played Devil's Dandy Dogs. We managed to convince Terry, the managing editor for Monaco Games, to run us through a game. Terry, thank you so much for taking your time to run us through. So I think there was 7 people playing this game. It was an absolute blast. I played the dog that hid in the shadows, and it was just such a fun game. And it runs for 2 hours, so that was great. But I played one game, and it was after the con was over.
I'm really considering printing up. I got the PDF here. I'm really considering printing it up and messing around with it.
If you back the Kickstarter, you should be able to claim it already.
I know. I'm me, my neuroses. I like to, have my working copies and I like to have my nice stuff on the shelf.
That's hilarious.
And I forgot to mention Terry. Terry was also from MCG that was there. That was the one person. Terry, I'm sorry because you're the one that ran me.
And
That was dead.
we got to get Terry on the show.
That's in the works already. That should be happening soon.
What you call it? Speaking of Dandy's Devils, I'm butchering the name.
Yeah.
Speaking of it, again, you said they premiered it, whatever have you. That's a nice little segue into this question. And again, you didn't tell us anything about this, so I'm genuinely curious. Did Montica Games announce anything new that we haven't heard anything about yet? Any book or product or content, anything?
They didn't announce anything new, but they had print copies. I actually have mine here. They had print copies of Devil Dandy Dogs, and they had print copies of The Weird.
Is that mine?
Freaking awesome.
Nice.
Chock full of charts. So I picked up my physical copy while I was there, so I don't have to claim the ticket later. Which that was selling off the shelves. Oh God was selling off the shelves, and Devil's Dandy Dogs were pretty much the two only copies that were premiered. I was lucky enough to go out to dinner on most nights with the entire MCG team when they did do a group dinner, which was freaking awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me, to partake in all these side activities. And I've heard, I can't really say, but I've heard some ideas for stuff in the future, which is I'm super stoked about if it does come to fruition. Nothing is entirely set in stone. They were just talking about the ideas that they were tossing around, and some of them sounded hella cool.
So when we're off camera, you're gonna tell us about the stuff, right? Okay.
Probably not. Charles will kill me.
You'll never know.
But yeah, none of them is like, oh, we're doing this. It was like, oh, we're tossing around these ideas.
Sweet. So, well, with all that being said, Al asked you about the new products. You told us about the games you ran, but did you get to do anything else like that was like hella cool while you were there besides, running games and so on and so forth?
I mean, to be honest, I think the coolest experience, but that's because I'm an MCG fanboy. The coolest thing was just to be able to chill with the MCG team. After the con was over, and my roommate for the con was Jeremy. He's the webmaster for MCG. So I got to hang out, talk to him. We're also gonna get him on the show, and he dropped a lot of jewels on the business side of things. And you guys both know I'm very interested in that side of the gaming industry, like the people behind the scenes and what really makes game companies work, and why do companies make the decisions that they do, and so me and him spoke a lot at night about just not only MCG, because he works for a lot of different, he does web design, and he designs a lot of the product lines for multiple gaming companies. So it was great talking to him. And the last day on that Sunday night, we got to go to a classic arcade with the entire MCG team, and that was hella fun. I got to hang out with Brandon. We walked around. I only bought one book. I bought the Pirate Borg. Me and Al have a love affair with Morg Borg right now. So I bought Pirate Borg, which was hella cool. But that was the only thing. And I bought some plushies for my twin 7-year-olds.
I'm jealous. I want a copy of Pirate Borg.
Yeah.
I definitely would have picked that up. I heard it has cool ship rules in it.
I bought a Displacer Beast plushie and a Mimic.
Nice.
Yeah. But other than that, I spent the majority of my time at the MCG, MCC. They had a whole lounge. So I spent the majority of my time at the MCG lounge. Either I was filming videos about MCG or playing or running games. And running games was hella fun. And I think one of the things that made me give this idea about, hey, let's talk about con games, is because I had two dramatically different experiences from the very first game I ran at the con and the very last game I ran at the con, and made me it made me want to talk to you guys about talking to this. The very first game I ran at the con was Bitter Seeds, and I had 6 players that never played the Cypher system before. Like, totally new. Like, give me the elevator pitch. Why is the Cypher system cool? And the last game I played was a Numenera game, which makes sense. That the entire table were all experienced Numenera players that, I didn't have to worry about teaching anything. I didn't have to worry about them spending XP, doing player intrusions, using their ciphers, because they were all veteran cipher players. And it made me think about, okay, let's talk about cons. Let's talk about running and playing for con games.
All right, well, that's a perfect segue into what you're saying. Let's start. Let's talk about the player's perspective at conventions.
Yeah, definitely.
Why don't you drop your initial jewel, and then me and Al will riff off of that, and tell people what we think.
All right, and chat, feel free to jump in, because I think everyone running or being a player in a con, in a convention, has their own experiences that's going to add into the discussion. But the first question I think we should definitely ask ourselves is, should you as a player have expectations when you sign up for a convention game?
I believe you should have a few, but I believe there's one expectation that I know I walk into a convention as a player, and that's whoever's running the game, that they know the system, and they're ready to give me a game. Like I said, we don't know the adventure, so I don't care what they make up, or if it's the actual adventure or whatever, but I want you to know the system. I want you to be able to make sure we're not bogged down in the minutia of trying to figure out the rules and learning the game together, because I'm there to experience the game and learn it as a player. So that's for me, that's the major expectation I have as a player.
How about you, Al?
Yeah, I would say, and again, this is, I guess, a hot topic-ish. I think not really too much at conventions, maybe more playing with randos. But I come to a table with a random group with the expectation that it's going to be a safe space, that, everyone's going to be polite, whatever. There's not going to be any heated arguments about rules or whatever. No one's going to be prejudiced or anything like that. I think that's a huge expectation. You should come knowing that it's going to be a safe place for you to enjoy this game.
I think, all right, let me separate a convention, an in-person convention where you're actually paying for a ticket to play in a game. Like, for those that are not familiar with, there's usually between a $2 to $8 cost, and in some cases, if you're a celebrity, $250 to play in a game. But there's usually some sort of monetary cost to play in a con game for most gaming companies. So you should absolutely have an expectation as a player when you show up to play in a con game that you purchased the ticket to play. I don't think there is anything to feel bad about expecting a safe place, expecting a capable GM. Like Dean said, they don't have to know the adventure by heart, but they should know the basic rules of the system that they're trying to teach. And most people, myself included, I pay for games that I've never played before. Like when I go to a con and I want to pay I'm going to pay for a game that, hey, Mork Borg looks cool. A lot of people are talking about Mork Borg. I want to play it. I'm paying for the right to sit down with a competent GM, if that makes any sense.
Yep, absolutely.
So as a player, you should absolutely have an expectation to have a safe space, a competent GM, and, last but not least, at the bare minimum, have a fun time.
Right. Well, that's it. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Nobody should walk away from the table feeling some kind of way.
So the next little, oh, good. You want to read the next little question I jot down now? I mean, or Dean?
Next question is, what should you bring to a con game as a player? Personally, a open mind, a willingness to learn, understanding that there's a finite, amount of time we have at this table, and and basically a good attitude, a really good attitude, because this is a new experience, and you don't know who you're at the table with. So I think that just kind of goes in line with what Al said, that safe space. So you got to bring that with you, that attitude with you to nurture that.
And I just have one key word for this: enthusiasm. Be excited to be there playing the game. Don't just sit there. Oh, I rolled to attack. My character says this. You want to be in the moment. Make it exciting for the GM. Make it exciting for the other people at the table. Be enthusiastic.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because someone told me that they were running Stealing Stories for the Devil, right? And this one person, I guess he signed up for it and didn't. He didn't realize that it was as like group storytelling narrative of a game that it was, and so apparently he kind of wanted, like a combat heavy. And Stealing Stories is very dependent on what the overall group decides the adventure is going to be. And the person told me, like, I don't want to name any names, but the person told me that this particular player basically shut down after like the first hour of the game. So I could definitely and it kind of brought the mood down of the entire group. He also won. He didn't know anyone else in the group. So now you're showing up and it wasn't to your expectations of what you were expecting as a game, but his shutting down kind of brought down the mood of the entire table. So enthusiasm is a great one, Al. The one thing I was going to add is it'll be helpful if you brought your own pencil and your own dice. Well, and I know that this sounds funny, but I know that most game companies provide those, right? But it's usually not at the table. So it's a lot easier when you show up and everyone has their dice and their pencil to write whatever notes on the character sheet, whatever they want to write. It saves the GM 5 minutes of getting everybody set up, so it's also, it's courteous to the rest of the people at the table. That's not a mandatory though, because I will say MCG did have pencils and dice. It just wasn't at the table.
And like I said, I think all of that just goes in line with, like Al said, the enthusiasm, what you were just saying, that's having that open mind, because again, when you sit down at a table and it's a new game, you don't know what that game entails. You really don't. You don't know anything about a game until you pick up the book or somebody introduces you to it for the first time. So if you don't have yourself in a position where you're, open to the new experience, then you have situations like that, like you said, people shutting down and hindering the experience of other people. So yeah, definitely don't do that.
You do notice that none of us said that you need to have read the rules, because I don't think that's important at all in a con game.
Nope.
I mean, it's nice to have a little bit of a kind of a basic understanding, but it's not necessary.
Yeah. And it's nice for the GM, but it's not. It's like what you said, but it's not necessary for the. Most people want to experience what's this all about, and the expectation is that I'm gonna sit down with someone that actually can explain it to me and knows the rules that'll make it run a little smoother. That's why most people join con games in the first place.
Yeah.
Al, you want to read the next little question?
Yeah, one second. I lowered the thing. Yeah, so as a player, what is the most important thing you want to get out of a convention game?
You missed one, Al.
Oh, did I miss one?
You want to put it?
Oh, I am so sorry. Do you change your play style when playing in a convention game? And yes, 100%, you need to. There is definitely a huge difference between a convention game and a home game. The biggest difference is that limited time. You have the 4 hours or whatever time frame it is, and that's it. People need things. It's a convention. There's things to do. There's people to see. Like, you can't be running 5-6 hour games when you're only allotted the 4. And yeah, that comes down to play style.
Usually the table is booked up after the 4 is done anyway, so you don't even have that choice if you want to go 4 hours and 30 minutes, because there's people waiting to play the next, same table you're in.
And I will agree with Al. Yes, change your play style for the simple fact, I'll be honest. Not only do you change your play style at a convention, but you change your play style from when you're running a one shot with people you don't know versus a table full of your friends. People that you played with for years. So I think you need to learn to be flexible and learn how to shift gears. Just because, what Al was saying, there's a limited amount of time. There's,
But when you say, I'm gonna be the jerk to both of you. When you say change your play style, how? Like, how exactly?
Prime example for me. I like to be in the moment. I like to be very, narrative, in character. And I know I can be long-winded and so on and so forth. But if I'm in a home game, I can have my moment to shine. I have to remember that, hey, guess what? There are 5 other people at this table. We got 4 hours. I can't take 15 minutes of game time to have my moment. You know what I'm saying? So things like that, you become very much aware of who else is at the table and that other people need to get their experience too. So you learn to share, the table. That, at least for me, that's what I'm talking about.
How about you, Al?
No, I mean, that's basically it. You need to be more concise. You can't have those moments that you would have in a home game. You have the moments, obviously, but they can't be as drawn out as maybe you would like. So you have to learn to kind of rein yourself in a bit. And another important part is, again, it really depends on table to table. You need to learn how to share that spotlight. Because everyone at that table, you might not know them, and it might come off across rude if you're not giving everyone else their time to shine as well.
I would think the biggest change in play style for me personally is to be able to accept that the game is going to run on rails and know not to deviate from those rails too much. In a home game, when you're playing with your friends and you're playing, it doesn't matter what time frame you're playing, your guys can accept collectively, hey, we're going to do something really kooky that's going to, for the next 45 minutes, we're going to go shopping, we're going to do, whatever it is you're doing. But in a con game, you have to help the GM out, knowing that he's trying to follow a story pattern, to keep the game within the confines of 4 hours, that you have to be willing to accept that the game is going to be on rails. Because most pre-written adventures for con games are designed to run in 4 hours and allows you to keep them in these rails to keep the scene structure moving forward. And that might not be most home games, but in a con game, as a player, you have to accept that.
Well, not only accept it, but also I even think more than just accepting is kind of embrace it. You're there to tell that story. You're there, especially when you're playing a narrative game like, or a, Cypher system or, things like that. I mean, even like D&D and stuff, that's the nature of it. It is railed, But I'm saying when you're looking at stuff where you have a lot more leeway and flexibility, you hit the nail on the head, and is accepting and embracing the idea that, hey, we're here for this particular story. This is this episode of the TV show we want to see, and it's focused on this. So yeah, I agree with you 1,000% there.
And the last question is, as a player, what is the most important thing you want to get out of a convention game?
A good time.
Yeah. I mean, a good time and experience. Especially like you said, I think we're all, we're all guilty of normally trying to play games that we haven't played before. So I want that good time. I want to walk away from the table going, hey, you know what? Maybe I should go buy this book, or maybe I should go get this box set, or whatever. I don't want to get up from a table and be like, man, glad that's over. Damn, I wish I could get about 4 hours back.
And you know what it is too? Like I've been in some bad games at cons where the game was bad, but the system necessarily wasn't bad. And I've been in bad games where the system was bad. Oh, I've been in good games where I didn't like the system, but the GM ran an enjoyable session. Right? And that's why I join con games, is to decide whether or not I like a system or not. Right? I mean, I'll be honest. Like, I wouldn't sign up for a Cypher system game at a con unless it's someone I know, or like one of the MCG team running it, because I know Cypher system. If I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna try something new, and I want to know whether I'm gonna like the system or not. And it's a lot easier to decide when the GM gives you an enjoyable game. So for me personally, the one thing I want to get out is I want my 4 hours to be fun.
Right. Like you said, you don't want to walk away from the table, but like, damn.
And Mike put up a good point, and possibly meet a couple of new friends. That's very true too. You get to meet new people, which is always cool. And chat, like, what are your experiences as a player in convention games? And do you have any expectations? And do you think it's fair to have expectations? Is a good question as well.
Well, while they're contemplating, let's start moving forward.
Yep, we could definitely go to the more important thing from our perspective, because we all GMs, is let's talk about running games at convention, because I think the expectations are drastically different, from running a game to being a player in a game. So, I'll ask the first question. You guys could chime in and chat can as well. Is what should be the first thing you do when you know you're running a game at a convention?
No, just the same thing I said initially. Know the system. On top of knowing the system, please at least have a basic idea of what the adventure is you're running. Again, like I said, players don't know the adventure because they're con adventures. So you can do whatever you want. But if you know the system, nobody will ever know the difference. I mean, just ask Anthony.
I actually did that this time. I actually read all the adventures beforehand. I even read the Old Gods one and never got a chance to run it.
I'm only busy with you, man, because I just think it's the best thing in the world. And Anthony,
but that Gen Con, I literally didn't get that book till we showed up. I mean, you were nice enough to mail me the con book like 2-3 weeks in advance, so I actually got to read the adventures. But that Gen Con, I didn't know any of the adventures. I showed up and got the book and said, "Okay, you're running in 4 hours."
It was great because Anthony got the titles, and the title was all he needed.
It was like the third day of Gen Con before I actually read the adventure.
It was even funnier though. But the point is, because you knew the system. That's what I'm saying. Knowing the system, nobody was none the wiser what the adventure should have been. And people walked away from his table, slapping high fives and whatnot, talking about how good the good a time they had. So I think that for any GM worth their salt, and be confident.
You got any suggestions? What's the first thing you think you should do before running a game at a convention?
Well, what I normally do is I prepare. We already said reading and knowing the system or whatever have you. But you already mentioned this earlier with the get your stuff together. Have dice ready. Have notepads. Have pencils, paper. Pens, whatever. A means for them to just jump right in. And if you want to be extra special with it, if it's not provided by, you know, whatever company you're running the game for, if you're just doing it yourself, get some art in there, like make it immersive, have some soundscapes ready, something like play off your phone. Like, you can, even though it's a convention game, you can still kind of bring those home elements into it should you decide to. And it does help with immersion.
Props are always good.
Most companies, specifically, I know MCG does. You get a packet for each individual adventure, and it has the character sheet. Read the characters. Look at the packet. See if there's any extra stuff in that packet. Because sometimes those packets have imagery that's in the adventure book that you can share out. So look at that image. Even if you're not going to use it verbatim as written in the book, you can use the image for ideas, you know, to be able to.
And you, like you said, no one was there because, like, what was that one adventure where they had all the props? The Cypher System adventure, the Taking.
Oh, the Taking, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it had lots of props, and it's really good for you to know what your adventure entails in order to give it that experience. So yeah.
And the last thing I would add just to this is know where your tables are. And what I mean by that is some con halls, like Cypher, MCG had like 9 or 10 tables. It wasn't a lot. But I noticed like Paizo and Free League had these big rooms where there was like 50, 60 tables. Know where your game is going to be at so it doesn't take you 20 minutes to figure out what table you're running at. I know it sounds dumb, but it's important to get there before your players do.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. So next question is, what do you expect from the players during a convention game?
That's a good one. Because I expect the players, to be honest, I just expect the players to give me a chance and pay attention. Other than that, I don't expect anything else. Like, give me a chance, and what I mean by that is, like, let the system, like, come there with honestly wanting to play the system and have a good time. You know, and pay attention.
I would say that, and this is a good time to read what Ketup had said. Ketup said in chat, don't be afraid to take charge in situations where you need to make sure it's a comfortable environment in case of problem players. So you as a player, don't be the problem player. Like, that's a real easy thing to do. Like, don't be prejudiced, don't be a jerk, like, give people their time to shine. Like, all the things we were saying before, like, don't be that guy. That's like the best thing you can do.
Yeah, I mean, and that's truly, I think, I just, you know, agree with Al and Anthony both, you know, because I think they hit the nail on the head. Be open-minded, you know, you're coming there for an experience. Remember, this is not your home game. This is not the people you play with on a regular basis. So you're dealing with a different personality for your GM. You're dealing with a different play style. You're dealing with a group of people you've never encountered. So open-mindedness is paramount. Secondly, that open-mindedness will keep you from being the ass goblin at the table. So I agree with you guys 100%.
I mean, I can honestly say I did not have a bad table this entire con. I didn't have a problem player this entire con. You know, most of the issues that came up with me was, you know, like just telling somebody to wait their turn, and once you told them once, it was like, you know, like if nothing was ever done maliciously. Like, I didn't have that guy at the table or that gal at the table that was purposely ruining anything. So, I mean, I was super lucky. But, yeah, and I don't expect much from the players, to be honest. Just pay attention and, you know, don't be rude to the other players. And just go there honestly wanting to have a good time. And if you aren't, for whatever reason, whether it's the GM, whether it's the system, whether it's the other people there, don't let that ruin the experience for everyone.
Agreed.
Definitely an excellent point there. But moving along here, do you have any tips to help out a first-time GM at a convention? Yeah,
that's a good one.
there's a lot of things you can do to help. Well, was this phrased, because this was not phrased super well, do you mean as a player at the table, helping a new GM, or just tips for a new GM?
No, new GM running their first convention game.
Whatever
Yeah,
tips you might have for the GM.
GM running their first convention game. Because
Tips do we have?
yeah, that's big. There's a big difference. I've seen experienced GMs lock up at the table at their first con game. Because one, it's running online with strangers and running in person with strangers who paid for the right to be there at the table can be stressful, especially when you're locking eyes with 6 or 7 people you've never seen before, and the pressure's on you, or in your mind, the pressure's on you to provide an enjoyable experience. So definitely is a different beast.
Well, like I said, for me, as far as if I was going to give any new GM a tip, I would literally say, be confident. You know what? Be confident, because there's 2 sides to this. A, it's your game. You're running it. B, especially if you have a group of people who don't know the rules yet, they don't know where you're making a mistake. And if you're at a table full of people who possibly know the rules, trust me, if they're there for the same experience you are, you let them know, hey, I'm a new GM, bear with me. You're going to get help. It's nothing, just be confident. Stand in your space. You are the GM. This is your table, your game. We're going to have fun.
I have one. Oh, what?
Okay.
No, I'm curious to hear Al's perspective, because Al is the newer GM Al went from being running for like a year to running at a con. I'm curious to hear what Al's perspective is.
As far as my personal perspective, Dean already hit the nail on the head. Be confident. Like, I just had to be confident in what I was doing, what I was saying, and the material. Yeah, that was all fine and well. I had one bit of practical advice, not as far as like confidence or psychological, whatever. Practice your indoor speaking voice at a high volume. Conventions are very loud, and your normal speaking voice probably will not cut through. The table's pretty big. There's dozens of other people around you playing their games, and you're going to need to be able to have your voice projected a bit. So I don't know how you would practice this. I'm just a loud guy in general, so it's not something I needed to practice. But yeah, having the ability to be heard is monumental at these con games. Yeah. I know that wasn't the answer, the perspective answer you're looking for, but yeah, very practical and sound advice there.
That's actually really great advice. I always found myself having to speak a little louder or stand up if you have to, because like I'll say this 100% true. Just imagine that there's 8 or 9 games all happening simultaneously, and everyone's laughing and having a good time, and some people are talking in character. It does get kind of hard to hear.
I will give you guys an example of an experience at this past Gen Con. Speaking of Jeremy started to lose his voice, and he brought a Bluetooth speaker and microphone. Mm-hmm. And it was the worst thing to have to contend with, because he was close to your table. So again, you had that was one of those things.
It's bad for you.
Right. That's what I'm saying. As Jim, it was great for him.
Yeah,
because it was helping him save his voice. But for the other people around, I eventually ended up moving our table over, and because I know how to project my voice and make it cut through, but it was very hard trying to hear the other players at the table, because they didn't, like I was saying, they didn't have that talent. That wasn't something that they do. And so Al gave you that is that's gold bullion right there.
I mean, I think the best advice I could give a first-time convention GM, even though you've been running, is do not be afraid, and I can't stress this enough, do not be afraid to edit the adventure that you're running. Like, every table is different, and every group gravitates to a certain scene in the adventure. And if they gravitate towards the first scene of the adventure and spend an hour and a half in the intro scene, you have to make adjustments as a GM and cut out stuff and change stuff. And don't worry that the adventure was written by Bruce Cornell or Monty Cook, because at the end of the day, Bruce Cornell or Monty Cook wants you to give them an enjoyable adventure in 4 hours. And if that means cutting stuff, that means cutting stuff. And I've heard from both of them personally who ran adventures from this book at this con, how to cut stuff themselves. That's just GMing. So, like, do not worry about having to follow the adventure 100% as written in the book. I mean, you want to keep the general story, yes. But if you have to change and cut things to make it enjoyable for the table, that's just what you have to do. That's the best advice I could give. You know, I've played in games and heard discussions with other GMs how they spent too much time in a certain scene and then had to cut the game off without a logical resolution, without any resolution to the story, and it kind of leaves the players feeling empty, and you want to avoid that. So you're going to have to edit. You're going to have to. It's inevitable.
Sean K. Reynolds said it. I think Sean K. Reynolds said it the best. And he'll tell you all the time, players are unpredictable. They're never going to do what you expect. They're always going to go in a direction you don't expect them to. But the reality of this is that the players don't, like I'll say it 1,000 times, the players don't know the story. They don't know all the middle pieces. They don't know all the nuances that are supposed to be there. So it's okay. Just you know what I'm saying? If the players are supposed to go north, but they decide to go south, guess what? Put whatever they're supposed to find in the north, put it in the south. They'll never know the difference. So learn to adjust, you know, and don't become bogged down in what is written out there before you. You know, and because a player never knows. And as long as, like we said, be confident, like Anthony was just saying, you know, just, you know, don't be afraid to make those adjustments.
The other thing too is with editing, I had a game where I was running the crawling, and everyone at all the GMs we usually talk. And one of the issues we were having with the crawling is that it's a heavy puzzle-based adventure. And, you know, puzzles are hit and miss with certain tables, right? Certain tables want to dig deep they want to figure out the puzzle, you know, so they want to, like, actually exhaust all their resources to figure out this puzzle. Other tables just want to roll a die and say, hey, did I figure it out? Okay, we're going on to the next piece. Right, and my last game of the crawling, the group really zoomed through the puzzle. You know what I mean? So I had to, instead of delete stuff, I had to add stuff to the story because they ran through the puzzle. So it's not only editing, sometimes you got to add additional content to keep it within a 4-hour time frame.
So yeah, you know, I mean, it can benefit you if you're not a person who's good at improvisation. I'd say it benefits you to pick up a book on improv or go, you know, watch Whose Line Is It Anyway? You know, watch things where people are being improvisational. Because
you need to do that, dude. If you know that you have problem with improv, do some pre-prep beforehand.
Well, yeah, that too.
That's actually a really good segue into the next question here. Sorry to cut you off. When you're, again, like you said, you might need to add to a game or something. So our next question here is, what do you bring when you're running a game at a convention game? And something that helps unbelievably with that situation is just having cards, the stuff that Monty Cook Game makes, like NPC cards, the Cypher cards. I think there's even story prompt cards, like just anything to get the imagination going when there's a lull or something. Absolutely nice to have.
You know what's hella good? The NPC deck for cons is super awesome, because when you need it, you could take the name, even if you're not taking anything on the card, take the name. Yeah. So those decks are freaking awesome. And for Numenera,
the other thing I normally bring to the convention, is what Anthony was talking about before. When he was saying, bring your, players bring pencils, bring your paper, bring your dice. I always have a nice big bag of dice. I always have, a couple of legal pads with me, some index cards. This is just me in general. I have extra little things that I can pass out to keep, so I don't have to go and seek things out. I keep extra pencils. So as a GM, if you're carrying your bag, you know what, get you a little pencil case and, get you 12 pencils and, get you a few legal pads. Just have those little things around. That's what I bring to the table, besides.
I also make sure I have a big bottle of water and a snack, because usually the convention game is 4 hours long, and you might take a 10-minute break in between, a quick bathroom break. So I make sure I bring water and a snack, a candy bar, some nuts, something that, just in case you feel your energy is getting low and you need a boost, just something to have. So it's good to have in your bag. And I like to, I personally I have the adventure in the physical book, and then I like to have my iPad or tablet with me with the adventure on it as well, just in case I can look at 2 references. And that's pretty much what I run with at cons. But you need that big bottle of water.
You definitely need something to drink. And I
give you cotton mouth. I don't know.
And I didn't even think about saying anything because I always have my tablet. And I keep all my books and all the adventures and all that stuff on the tablet. And it's like really nice to have both, the physical book and your tablet.
Yeah, it's just good. What makes you feel comfortable if it's writing, using a tablet or having a pen and pad, if that makes you feel comfortable, carry that. But always, have your con bag ready.
I like to actually keep a couple things in there that I don't normally carry, just in case people like them. Things I don't normally use myself in case other people like them. Like, you guys know I don't really use minis or nothing like that, but I do in my con bag carry around a gridded whiteboard, minis, things that if people wanted that experience, I could provide it for them.
Oh, that's a great point. I totally thought. Thanks for bringing that up. Also, if you have the adventure beforehand, you could print out all the images and have them in your bag. I was using my iPad to show the images, but a lot of other people, and I've done this before with my personal games that I wrote, have all the images so you could just plop it on the table and say, hey, look, I'm going to describe the scene, but look at it as well. Provide them a visual. Is always helpful, and the players appreciate that stuff.
I'm the king of the lamination. I love laminating stuff. I got my laminator right here, and I do, like Anthony said, print stuff up. I have reference sheets and stuff like that. Whatever makes you feel good. But as far as we were saying, your prep, prep for a con game is different than prep for your home game. Because your home game, everything is in your room, or you know what you're taking to the game this weekend, or whatever the case may be. But a con game, you got to be a little bit more flexible and inventive, because you never know what you might need. So just kind of think outside the box and try to figure what you want to carry with you.
You want to read the next question? Oh, you read the last one, Dean.
As a GM at a convention game, what are you trying to accomplish the most?
You already skipped one just like it.
Oh, wow, I sure did. I'm having the same moment that I have. How do you deal with different personalities at the table?
Oh, that's a tough one. Normally I would be able to answer this, but I really had a pleasant experience. I didn't have any bad personalities. I definitely had different personalities, but not necessarily bad that I'd be like, oh, this is a problem player. I had the occasional quiet player, but they were engaged, they were, you know, involved in the story. They just chose not to act out in character, you know, and that's fine because as long as they're engaged in the story, I don't consider them a problem player. Actually, one of my favorite players was a player like that in the first game I ran. I also had a young player that I could tell was playing with his mother, and I could tell he was maybe like 12. He really wanted to play in character. I just got the feeling or the sense from him. He just didn't know how. So we were playing in the game, and he kept on saying "I'ma," like I'ma start saying this, or my character said this. So then, as an NPC, when he said that, I said, "Who's Ima? Like, is Ima here? Like, is somebody behind you named Ima?" And it like broke the ice for him. Like the rest of the game, he knew not to like just to stay in character because I saw he was trying. I was just trying to push him along, you know, to get him there. And I think that was an awesome experience. And you know, I know he had a great time, so which made me have a great time. So,
well, I can like bandy right on the back of what you're saying, Anthony, because I think that's the biggest portion of it is what you just did was basically you stayed aware of the different personalities at your table, and you did your best to nurture each one of those personalities, realizing that everybody is functioning different. Everybody's got different levels of experience when it comes to gaming. Everybody has different ways of, you know, how it's done because, you know, and until someone shows you, you don't have all the techniques. You may not know all the ways to do it. You don't realize that, you know, this is how you can do it. So I think the biggest thing for me with dealing with different personalities is trying to remember just that this is a eclectic pool of people in front of me, and I've got to be able to address those people in their own space, you know, and in their own way versus trying to make everybody see it through the lens that I look at it through.
I mean, I'm gonna jump on and say this too. It's okay to correct like disruptive behavior without being an asshole about it. Right. what I mean is if someone is talking out of turn or if someone, especially at a con game where you don't want to embarrass someone in front of a table full of strangers, right? So if someone is constantly talking out of turn or constantly telling other people what to do, you know, all you have to do is politely say, "Oh, hey, that's a great idea, but let's let Dean tell me what he wants to do." Or, "Dean, do you have an idea?" Like, "Al, that's a great idea," and hold that thought. But Dean, do you have something you want to add to this scene? Where you're acknowledging that they're participating in the game, but at the same time moving the spotlight slowly away from them to allow someone else to participate. And most people, like I said, most people don't do it maliciously. Most people are not jerks. So if you explain it, you know, in a non-threatening, a non-accusatory way, they'll tend to understand.
And that's basically what was going to be my point. But then there gets to a point where there's repeated infractions, right? Someone just is repeatedly being that guy, right? So, and this is actually an open question. What do you do in that situation? When like you explain, "Hey, can you not," or you say it in your polite way, "Hey, that's an excellent idea, but what about this person's idea," or whatever. And, you know, they kind of get it at first, but then they keep repeatedly stepping over the line or stepping over people's lines or trying to take the spotlight or whatever. How do you deal with someone who's repeatedly doing it after being told?
I'll give you the trick I use. I start separating the party and having that person in a scene by themselves. They'll still participate, but if I see one player is constantly either forcing their ideas on other players specifically forcing their ideas on quiet players that they don't know outside of just meeting in the game. I'll purposely create a scene where those people will be by themselves. So when they do say something, I'll be like, you're not in the scene. We'll get back to you. And now if they jumping in that, now it's like, okay, now dude, you're kind of stepping the line. And then the New York comes in. But I would separate them apart and allow those people that are being like, bullied is not the right word, but people are being, stepped on. Yeah, the people that are being stepped on, I'll give them their own scene.
That's an elegant solution. That's awesome.
That's a great way to handle it.
Because you don't want to be confrontational. Confrontational, even if the person's a jerk and you want to tell them that they're a jerk, you still have to concentrate on the experience of the other people that paid for this game. You know what I mean? So your ultimate goal is always to, try to avoid the confrontation as much as possible. After the game, you could be like, oh, hey, that wasn't cool. Like, but during the game, you can't let them see you sweat. It's like what we said in the beginning.
And I think it was our buddy Stormbringer said something that was really good too, which, is really cool. He said, if you find people he gave it as a player tip, but you find it's players who are comfortable being in the spotlight, kind of encourage them to drag other players into the spotlight with them, and that's actually a really good idea. I didn't even realize that we were doing it, but at Gen Con, it was a similar situation running Leave Those Ghosts Alone. It was literally a group. There were it was 6 people, and 2 people, each were sets of 2. So it was 3 sets of 2. And it was really cool because we had, of the 6 people, 2 of them were very outgoing. So I kept putting them in scenes together with other people so they would have to be a part of it, where they had to engage that other person. So that's really a good tip. And I think that's something we can all take away with too, what Anthony was saying.
I will say this too, also recognizing the table, because there's some people that want to be at the game and don't want the spotlight.
Right.
And you could give them a spotlight and read the table and see if they're not comfortable with the spotlight and are still engaged, are still paying attention, are still making all their rolls when they have to, or looking at their character, and that's where they draw their enjoyment from. Like, it's a fine line, because there's a fine line between giving someone the opportunity to use the spotlight and forcing them to be in the spotlight when they don't want to be. Because I've made that mistake before too. At conventions and online, and now I learned to at least read the table a little better. Like I said, I had this one player did not want the spotlight at all, but was probably one of my favorite players this whole con, because I could tell that they were enjoying. They just didn't want to be the talking face person. You know what I mean? They wanted to give their ideas and strategy outside of character and make all their rolls and use their sheet correctly. And after the game, told me that they had a fantastic time. It was a hell of a lot of fun. And your ultimate job is to give them the experience that they want.
Agreed. I agree with that.
So, all right. So the next question is, as a GM at a convention game, what are you trying to accomplish the most with your session?
I'd probably say 2 things. One, and which is top of the list, is making sure everybody there has a great time. I don't want anybody walking away from my table feeling like I wasted my money. This is just not worth it. And 2, we're here talking about Cypher Unlimited. I want to showcase Cypher system in the best light. I want people, like I said, I want you to walk away saying this was a great experience, but I also want you to walk away going, you know what? I need to have at least one of these books in my life because I think Cypher System is the bee's knees. Yeah, I'm a fanboy.
And I think my goal, I guess it really depends on the system. I'm not that I really run anything other than Cypher System. What am I saying? What you call it is to teach the system, make sure that people have a good grasp on what we're doing so that they can go and enjoy it by themselves or go and run it for other people. Like Anthony was saying, his main priority when he's a player is learning a new system. So if I can provide that learning experience for the people who are there, then I've accomplished my goal.
Yeah, I agree with what both of you guys said pretty much down the head. My ultimate goal is to see the smiling faces of the people that are sitting at the table that I know they had a good time. That's the ultimate goal, to go 6 for 6 at the con table. I'm gonna talk about something else too. Let me do 6 for 6 at a con table. Everybody are happy, and like what Dean said, promote whatever game system I'm highlighting. But let me just say this, at the DCC table, me and Brandon were walking through the DCC booth. They were running 1 GM for 10 and 12 players. And the first time we walked by, I thought it was a fluke, right? This is off topic, right? But I just had to say it. Like me and Brandon, we walked by, right? And the first time we walked by, I thought it was a fluke, right? Like I told Brandon, is that 1 GM with 10 players? Or 1 GM with 12 players? The next day we walked by and it was the same. Could you imagine? I would pull my hair out, and I don't even have much hair. To run for like 10 or 12, 1 GM with 12 players at a con? That has to be crazy.
I used to run a very large group. I'd run for up to 12 people. But I know, but I'm just saying, but it is about what you just said, Anthony. And I will tell you, I will never do that to myself again, and especially at a con.
Everybody mentioned, DCC. It was probably a meat grinder or the funnel, the level, but still, how am I going to keep track of 12 people, even with the funnel?
Like I said, it was. I mean, at Gen Con, I ran for 7 people twice. This past Gen Con, I had 7 people, and even that, and Cypher can handle it with no problem. But even that was a grind, more of a test of your mettle, because you had to, like you said, 7 people.
And keeping everybody involved, keeping everybody in the story. Yeah. But I just had to say that because me and Brandon were both like, what the hell? Like the first time I thought it was just like, oh, maybe there's a second GM in there. But it was every table, right? And then we like went by the second day and it was the same thing. But it is true. It's probably because DCC has that funnel where you like level 0 characters and then you die. But it's still 10 or 12 level 0 characters to keep. I just thought it was weird.
I mean, Mike is saying that there's no story in a meat grinder. There's people who love that stuff, which, again, if that's the case, then kudos to you for attaining your goal of running a meat grinder for 10 to 12 people, because, damn, that is still, even if it's just that, like he's saying, no story, just, that's still a lot of characters to keep track of. Even if they're, like, let's say 9 of the 12 die, like, it's still a lot to keep track of.
It was just crazy.
Real quick, Zeus Legion put up, guys. He said, I planned an epic 27-session drama masterpiece for the ages, but my players are doing unexpected stuff, and I was way off track from my once-in-a-generation genius saga. How do I shoehorn them back in? Well, I can answer that for you real easily. They don't know the story. So whatever they're doing, just keep putting the elements of your adventure in their path. They don't know where to go. They don't know what's happening. You should never let your players. I learned this that I don't let the players dictate my story, but I let them have a blast with their game.
I would say, Zeus, go back to your original manuscript or your original like story plot outline, right, and figure out the key scenes that you want, that you feel like you need for the overall narrative, right? And now rewrite, because Zeus comes across from the way it seems that Zeus prefers to prep everything out. So I would suggest go back to your original manuscript, find the key components of the narrative that you are the main like guts of your story, and rewrite your prep, including all the stuff that your players did. So that way you can write out what the players did, have in front of you what you want for your story, and then re-prep it that way. And do that every 4 or 5 sessions. Because if you're not comfortable just improvising it, this will help you.
Anything else?
Nah, I mean, y'all pretty much hit the nail on the head on that one. Again, I'm the wrong person to ask for that sort of thing. I'm like the one-shot guy. Like the no notes, like one-shot guy.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like I said, what Anthony just said is literally the goal. You know, find those key points, and like I said, then you can put them in the player's paths. You know, here I think the thing about oh, he's kidding. Never mind. Shut up, Dean. He said I was kidding. All right.
Well, Mike, there's some red flags in this for me in that statement. It's not the player story, but the GM. Some people love that. I don't think Mikey meant it that way. I think that it was more about having a big story piece in your head and wanting to tell that story, because regardless, all right, we're gonna go. Let's touch another little idea here, because regardless of how improv someone is, right, and I'm gonna push back on that because I'm a super improv GM. Anybody that knows me, I literally run with a freaking napkin and we'll play. But that doesn't mean that I don't have an overall concept of where the story is gonna start and end, right, in my head, right? Just because you have to make adjustments in the game to allow the players to contribute to the narrative doesn't mean that you can't steer them back to your original ending somewhere along the lines. No, so no matter how improv are you still do, whether you write it down or you to coin a rap phrase, freestyle it off the top of your head, you still had a thought and an idea how that game was gonna end. So you can't bash someone that preps everything. Most improvers are doing the same thing. We just keeping it in our head. We just keeping it in our mind where we want the story to go. I don't know if that's a controversial take, but it's a take.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and I think, like I said, I see what you're saying, Mike. And like I said, Anthony basically hit the nail on the head what it was for me, what I was saying. Yes, it is the table story, but you as the GM have already set the scenario. You've built the outline. You've built the tale that the players are going to be within. Like Anthony was just saying. I mean, it's a, it is the truth of the game. Without the players, you don't have a full story, but without you, the players don't have a damn thing to do. They're just players, so it goes hand in hand. What Anthony said, what I said, so yeah,
But that wasn't a kind story, but like what we always do, we sidetrack and go to other discuss. We should definitely do a video about that. Because there is a big difference between prep and improv, but I think that sometimes there's too much of a divide when there's a lot more similarities that you would normally think between the two.
I think Yeah, I think we could talk about that because it's literally, an improver. They prep on a macro level, where the you know the person who's more into the system and so on and so forth, they prep on a micro level. That's all.
Oh, Mike, I wasn't saying there was anything wrong with what you're saying, like just not my bag. Absolutely, I apologize if you took it that way because that was not my intent. I just wanted to. That was just a thought that I had, like stuck in my head that I wanted to express for a while.
Yeah,
now.
and I mean, I wasn't saying it that way either, Mike. I mean, we're just either talking about, it was discussion worthy, you know. So let's get to this last one we got here, and the last question you had.
I think we kind of hit that. We actually talked about the concerns already. I think I'll mention it. The last thing I want to say is you guys got it's October. We didn't even talk about some what we're doing for the October months. I also want to say that CypherCon is coming back before we even do our spiel. We're probably looking at February, March time, maybe April. And yes, the GMs will have a lot more time to post games, to actually fill in games. We're going to meet with Kate for MCG sometime within the next 2 weeks or so to start hammering out the details, so be on the lookout for that. And CypherCon's going to be freaking awesome. And we want to do it bigger and better, without a doubt. I personally posted my annual Halloween horror one-shot. This year I'm doing inspiration. I'm taking inspiration from Children of the Corn. So I'm running a horror one-shot called As Far as the Eyes Can See. If I don't know if it's fully booked yet, but if you want to play, hit me up on the Discord, and maybe you'll get in that game. And anything else? You guys have anything you guys want to
add? I'm planning to post up a one shot as well. I'm probably gonna adapt John Carpenter's The Fog for an adventure. I'm thinking that's what I want to do an adaptation to that, or whatever it is. It's going to be some classic, 80s horror. But right now, John Carpenter's The Fog is at the top of my list.
Mm-hmm.
No plans here, but that could change.
Yeah. Well, I managed to secure a lot of guests at Gamehole Con, so I have a list of 5 or 6 new guests that are going to come on and talk to us. So that's going to be exciting. And Al, you want me to go in my spiel before? So if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to our Twitch channel, because it's we really need your help. Or go to our YouTube channel, like, share, subscribe there. I messed the whole thing up. But I threw myself out of GM Intrusion, but I blame. You see, it was improv. I should have pre-prepped it. You see, I was right all along, Mike. Or go to our online store, pick up some cool Cypher Unlimited merch like that shirt Dean has on, or this hat I'm wearing. Our videos are always free, but give us a little donation on Ko-fi. It helps us out with little things like raffles, giveaways, running online conventions. So we greatly appreciate a Ko-fi donation. And last but not least, we love you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming on, watching. This was a great little chat. Dean, do you have any final words before I close this out?
Hey, I think we said all we had to say. See you later, everybody.
So yeah, thank you again, everybody. Thank you guys for having this chat with us. Not that I got a GM intrusion on myself. I'm talking to you guys like your guests. Like we're frazzled over here. Oh my god. I gotta take the glasses off for the sign off. That was too funny. But yeah, thank you everybody so much. And from us at the CU, we will see you later.
Later.